Good morning and welcome to another edition of Research Fantasy presents our MLB DFS pitcher picks for Friday, June 2nd, 2017. I'm your host, Nick from CWE, here to give you my top 3 tournament pitchers for this evening. I'm going to break from the article a little bit because with 14 games and 28 pitchers, we have plenty of options to choose from. I'm going to start things out tonight with Jimmy Nelson of the Milwaukee Brewers at 8,200 on FanDuel. Nelson is the perfect type of pitcher to use in tournaments because he does have some strikeout upside. Pretty much will have no ownership because he's taking on a Dodgers team that I think a lot of people like to play when they're not in their home park. And let's face it, Miller Park's suboptimal for Jimmy Nelson to pitch in. But he's coming off of a 10 strikeout, 7-inning win against the Diamondbacks. He got rocked the game before that against the Blue Jays. Actually only gave up 4 runs, but just didn't have the strikeout total to back it up. Had an 8 strikeout game before that against the Red Sox there. So all things considered, he hasn't been a disaster. But he has enough incomplete outings in between that to make people concerned. Obviously, we're always looking at bats when they're moving from a poor hitting location to a better hitting location, and because of that reason, I'm willing to buy in on some Jimmy Nelson ownership tonight at that price. Moving on from there, let's talk about JC Ramirez up against the Minnesota Twins. Game will be played at Angel Stadium, 8,400 on FanDuel. He is not a high strikeout guy. I mean, he does have a period where he went 9, 7, and 9 earlier this year, but he's been pretty consistent. Decent bet for the win because the Angels will be taking on Kyle Gibson, and we know the kind of train wreck that is. At the same time, we know that the Angels are reeling a little bit without Cameron Maybin and Mike Trout, but they're still a baseball team. They could still put up some runs. While we would want better from our pitcher in terms of strikeouts, if he can, mitigate damage, give up, very few runs, maybe 0-1, go 6 or 7 innings and get 5 strikeouts, he's going to turn out to be a good enough pitcher to help us really spend up on our bats tonight. So I definitely want to have some exposure to him. My strategy a lot of times tends to be a little different. I know that and Chris Sale this week was a perfect example, and as was Max Scherzer, even though he only gave up 1 run. But a lot of times with strikeout pitchers, you might trade the strikeouts for runs allowed. So I kind of sometimes will look for a guy who maybe could go a little bit deeper. Sale and Scherzer are bad examples because their pitch count isn't 100, it's 120. But that's why I'll consider a guy like Ramirez who really hasn't shown top-tier strikeout ability in the major leagues yet. Let's see. Now, let's go to the top. And I think that the route I'll go tonight will be Dallas Keuchel at 10-3 on the road against the Rangers. Now, a few things here. Stadium in Texas, very good for hitters. Keuchel, and on paper, not a strikeout guy, but he's had some decent outings, 7, 9, 9, 8 over his last 6 or 7 games. He's another guy who was typically pitching deeper into games. The Rangers' offense it's built for the home park, but I really wonder what it's capable of doing against a good pitcher like Keuchel there. I think of the 4 guys at the top, and we would be including Kershaw, Strasburg, Keuchel, and Darvish in with this, I kind of see him having the lowest ownership. It could be Darvish because Houston always seems like a more formidable lineup to go up against, and they score a lot of runs, so I think typically you don't want to put your pitcher up against them. But I could definitely see Keuchel being the one who gets left out because at least Darvish does have that perceived strikeout upside. That's what I try to buy on I'll try to buy the guy who's going to be expensive and have the least attention drawn to him. It's possible that all three of the pitchers outside of Kershaw fall into that category because he's such a dominating force that he'll pull the ownership off of them. But all things considered, I don't mind Keuchel. Okay, so to wrap it up, our top three of our favorite tournament pitchers today: Jimmy Nelson, JC Ramirez, Dallas Keuchel. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Check out what we have going on at researchfantasy.com. Like us on Facebook at Research Fantasy. Follow us on Twitter at Research and Win. And join us again tomorrow.